I tried to teach you how to handle comics in the 6th grade, but oh no, you wanted to play Little League instead.
Let's put a smile on that face.
I do not mean to pry, but you don't by any chance happen to have 6 fingers on your right hand?
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerve herder.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Robbo's Comics Reviews. I'm your host and reviewer, Robbo. I've got 4 comics to review for you today. We'll get stuck straight into them. 3 from DC, 1 from Marvel, and we'll start with the 1 from Marvel. It is issue 9 of volume 3 of the X-Men. This continues on the story that basically this team of X-Men, which is Emma Frost, Storm, Gambit, Wolverine, tracking down some missing children who, as we found out before, has been kidnapped or taken by the Lizard, Dr. Kurt Connors, famous Spider-Man villain. Spider-Man is pretty much a co-star in the story as well. He's along with the team for most of the way. This issue is sort of a turning point within the arc. Basically, they've stormed. The X-Men have gone into the Lizard's underground hideout or lair. They're looking for the children. They keep getting attacked by lizard creatures who are all pretty similar to Kurt Connors' character. It's pretty good. The storyline's actually really good. This is a really good example of a book that has a really good story, but for me the artwork lets it down in a big way. Chris Bacalo, I think you pronounce it, is the artist, who's more famous for his Vertigo work. I don't think his artwork takes too well to the X-Men series. The storyline does have a few heavier moments with children and disembodied bodies found on tables. The artwork is kind of okay there, but most of the time it's the artwork that lets it down. But like I said, the story's good. There's a bit of a turning point. The whole previous issue, you think they're just tracking down Kurt Connors, because obviously they're lizard men, so they're going to track down the lizard. A bit of a turning point though. You actually find out he's got a co-conspirator. I won't give that away who it is, but it's a pretty famous X-Men villain, so it ties it back into the X-Men world rather than Spider-Man's. I won't say who it is, but I will say he's a pretty demented geneticist, and it's not Mr. Sinister, so it's pretty good to see him back in the X-Men books too. He's one of my favourite villains. In the end, a bit of a cliffhanger. I'll give it away, but it's not really much of a spoiler. The spoiler is more about who the main villain is. The X-Men are turned into lizard men themselves on the last couple of pages, all except Spider-Man, and as far as we know, Emma Frost. So the next issue will be pretty good. Should wrap it up next issue. Be good to see. Next up, we have issue 55 of Justice League of America from DC Comics. I actually picked up a lot of books this week, but I wanted to review this one for a couple of reasons. One, well, probably the main reason actually is because it's now start of the crossover or the big event series across the comics. You're going to have to start buying a lot of books across a lot of series to get the full story of all the big tie-ins and stuff like that. This is part of the Reign of Doomsday series from DC. Features in Justice League America, Superboy, I think there's a Superman issue, The Outsiders and Steel. I chose to review this one because this is a really good example of a really poor issue, to be honest, and what looks like it's going to be a very poor crossover, and I'll show you why, compare it to other books later on. So basically this is the Doomsday series. Doomsday of course killed Superman way back in the day. Pretty hardcore villain, really hard to take down. The problem with this book is there's no lead up, there's no tension to Doomsday's appearance. It sort of just appears there and you're sort of like, oh wow, that was a bit of a letdown. I was hoping for more of a, like I said, tension building towards it. I actually haven't read a Justice League of America issue since they first re-released it. I read the first 7 issues I think, and they were pretty shit outs. I thought I'd give this one another go because Doomsday's in it. I like Doomsday, got to pick him up. And unfortunately disappointed, Justice League of America still sucks balls. The storyline is all over the shop. it goes back and forth between the Justice League of Supergirl, Dick Grayson's Batman, Starman's in there, and then it goes back to the Emerald City with a few of the other characters appearing there. They don't really tie in together at the moment. I don't know the whole backstory for it a lot, but the stories all over the place. The art's actually pretty good. Doomsday does look menacing. There's a few Green Lantern, well not Green Lanterns, a Blue Lantern and a Green Lantern appearance, which sort of makes no sense at this point in time. DC's pretty much lost me already with this crossover. I'm not picking up any more of the Doomsday books unless I hear about some major event happening with him, he kills another major character. But I would definitely not recommend this book. It's only $2.99, but don't pick it up. It's pretty crap, to be honest. They could have done a lot more. But now we have issue 58 of Green Lantern Corps from DC. As I said just before, about being event season, crossover season for the comics, and how poor Justice League was with the Doomsday series. This is part 2 of War of the Green Lanterns, obviously the big Green Lantern event for the year. It's not written by Jeff Johns, the Green Lantern Corps series, but this is definitely sucked me right in. This is a really good example of a good crossover and a good storyline. The first few pages do a really good job of recapping the two main Green Lantern characters, which is Kyle Rayner and John Stewart. Does a good little tiny couple of pages each of their backstory before you kick into it. So this is part 2. Basically, there's a rogue renegade guardian who's in control of all the Green Lanterns. He's come back, and he's basically brought the living entities of all the corps of the Green Lanterns, your blues, indigo, yellows, brought back all the actual bad manifestations of them, and he's basically coming in to kick some Green Lantern ass. This is part 2 of the story. Obviously it kicks on with Kyle Rayner and John Stewart, and one of the Guardians, I can't remember his name, I don't know, but the bad Guardian's name's Kroner, so they basically have to get this guy. This issue kicks on pretty well from part 1, which I'll talk about in a second. So if you want to pick up part 1, if you pick up part 2, you might want to pick up part 1, although, as I said, a great example of a good crossover. You don't need to pick up part 1. If you only get the Green Lantern Corps, you don't need to actually read Green Lantern to know what's going on in this book, which is great. So they're out chasing this rogue guardian. Basically all the Green Lanterns start to turn on each other because they're sort of mind controlled, or the ring's taken them over because it's been infected by no other than Parallax, the big Green Lantern bad guy. He's back under Kroner's control. So yeah, the Green Lanterns are fighting amongst each other towards the end of this issue. The Guardian who's with them, the good Guardian, he rips their rings off them, and they basically lose their powers, and at this stage they have the whole Green Lantern Corps coming to track them down because they're all mind controlled. So they take off their rings, and now they're basically just human, and sort of leave it at that sort of stage at the end of the book. So we've got to work out how they're going to survive without their rings. Really, really good book. I definitely highly recommend picking this up, and it's a great timing with the Green Lantern movie coming up. So yeah, so like I said. And lastly, we have my pick of the week, which is issue 64 of just a regular Green Lantern series by DC, part 1 of the War of the Green Lanterns. This book kicks ass. Green Lantern's been, it really is DC's #1 character at the moment, has been since Jeff Johns took on the writing, Blackest Night, Brightest Day, everything else that's gone on, the reboot of Green Lantern. Like I said, part 1 of the War. Really, really, really good jumping on point. If you haven't read Green Lantern before, if you're new to comics, great issue to pick up, especially with the Green Lantern movie coming out. Features all the characters that will most likely be in the movie. So part 1 of the War of the Lanterns, as I said before, Kroner, the bad Guardian, has come back and he's got all the entities of the rings with him. This one features pretty much on Hal Jordan. So Hal Jordan in the last few issues has been kicking around with the other core members, Sinestro and a few others who are all sort of bad guys, sort of good guys, but they're all different core members. And the Guardians have had enough. They've said, nah, we've got to take Hal Jordan in. What he's doing is wrong. So they send a bunch of Green Lanterns to track him down. They get there, and just as they're about to try and arrest Hal, their rings are possessed. They're taken over by Krona and the entities. Hal survives. How Jordan survives. How he does though is not really clear at this point. But basically it's up to him. He's going to have to go track out Krona. I won't tell too much about the story. There's a really good few little points and twists in here. He ends up on his own though. He loses the other core members. And so he's got to go on. Part 1, Part 2 is in Green Lantern Corps. Part 3 is in Green Lantern Emerald Warriors. As far as I know, you probably don't have to pick that book up. Each title's its own little contained story at this stage, so far it's really good. This book is really, really good and a really good jumping on point for people. Can't recommend it enough. If you don't read Green Lantern, you should be, and this is an issue why. And with the excitement, like I said, with the movie coming out, jump on board. It's really good. It really is really, really good. Okay, so that's my pick of the week, and that's it. I only did 4 this week. I did pick up a whole lot of books, but that's the 4 I want to talk about. The other rest ones I'll pick up were mainly X-Men books anyway. So do yourself a favour, go pick up the Green Lantern books. If you don't get any other books, definitely get those ones. And we'll see where we go from here. I'll see you next week.